All right, last week we went over the beheading of John, and we talked about getting the whole picture. This is part 2 of that message. Daniel in danger. I guess if you wanted to call it anything, it would be Daniel in danger. We're going to be talking about Daniel and the lion's den. So last week, just to kind of give a little outline of what happened last week, the different roles of each people involving on how each action ended up causing the beheading of John the Baptist. Today we will look at Daniel and why he was cast into the den of lions and what we can learn from Daniel. So let's go to the Lord in prayer. And thank you, Lord, for everything that you have done and will do. Thank you, Lord, that you put examples of scriptures that we can glean from, that we can help to understand how we need to deal with various things that happen in our lives and how we can deal with them biblically, and then how we can deal with them the way that you would have us to deal with them. So as we're going over Daniel and the lion's den, may we be open to understanding maybe some of our faults, some of our hurdles that we have to deal with when facing the unknown. So may the service give you the honor and glory that you deserve. And all this we ask and thank in your precious holy name. Amen. All right, so Daniel chapter 6 is where we're going to be pulling most of our text today. But to better understand how we got to Daniel chapter 6, if we look at the last 2 verses in Daniel chapter 5, verses 30 and 31. In Daniel chapter 5, 30 and 31, it says, "And that night was Belteshazzar, the king of the Chaldeans, slain." So we understand that there was a king before this king, and he was slain. And Darius, the Median, took the kingdom, and being about 62 years old. The 62 years old is 32 years of age. So when he began being king, after the previous king, the Belteshazzar, he was 32 years. So he was a young king. So let's start with Daniel chapter 6, our main text. And we'll go to verse 1. It says, "It pleased Darius to set over the kingdom 120 princes, what should be over the whole kingdom." Now, when you look at princes back in the day, our understanding of princes, we think of somebody that's underneath of a king. In this regard, it is governor. So when you see princes, think of governors. And then we go to verse 2, "And over the 3 presidents, over the governors, of whom Daniel was first." So it doesn't say that Daniel was seen above them at this particular point. Daniel was just the first president. Now the president was the chief commissioner. So we're going to see president is the commissioner, and the princesses is the governors underneath of them. So Daniel was the first commissioner of this. That was the princess that might give an account unto them, and the king should have no damage. So the governors of each area, all 120 of them, would come with a report to the chief commissioners. Daniel, and there was 2 other commissioners. So king should have no damage. Now no damage is no loss due to disloyalty and mismanagement. So no loss. Now typically somebody that is in charge, a manager or something, wants people underneath of him to make him look good. You don't want to have any damage. You don't want to have anybody that would go against it. So the king wanted a chief commissioner to be what? Honest. Wanted somebody honest to be with him. Wanted to be trustworthy, dependable, moral, of good standing in the community. So logically, we're going to learn exactly why Daniel was the first to be picked here. But this is where things change. You might say, okay, Darius is smart. He said 120 governors. He's got 3 people. But that's a little bit unbalanced, if you think about it. At my job, each supervisor has about 12 people under him. 12 is manageable. In this, if you do the math, that is 40 governors to each commissioner. Imagine it, 40 people reporting to one person. Now, the reason why he wanted somebody to be honest and of good character and everything, because everything that's going on in the area is going to be reported, and they want to have good report. They want to have honest reporting of what's going on in the kingdom. So this is where things change in verse 3. Then this Daniel, if you want to mark that, this Daniel, that's going to be coming up here in a little bit. So this Daniel was preferred above the presidents and princesses. So that's saying that he is above the 120 governors and the 2 other commissioners. So that's above 122 people. Show of favoritism. Now, I don't know at work if you've ever had somebody that the boss favored more than anybody else. If you had anybody at work that seemed to do very little at work and seem to get by. They seem to always be in the manager's office. They seem to not do anything, and they don't seem to be getting in trouble at all. Family members. My favorite of my family, I know you're not supposed to have favorite family members, but how many people here have favorite family members? Nobody. Okay, one person. One person does. Okay. So I had, my grandmother was my favorite. Now, I'm not saying that I loved anybody else, but my grandmother was honest. My grandmother was loving. My grandmother was trustworthy. My grandmother, I held to a different standard. If my grandmother got mad at me, I was distraught. But if the others, I know it didn't really bother me as much. But favoritism. So this is what it's saying here in the text. Daniel was preferred above the president. So this is, if you think about it in the I guess, a job role, that he was favored as, in the position. He was, one of the, side by side. So he was the president and the princesses because of an excellent spirit was on him. So it wasn't as if anything else besides this. It gives the reason why he was preferred. Of an excellent spirit was with him. So let's back up a little bit. Just go to Daniel chapter 5. Verse 11 and 12. So Daniel chapter 5, 11 and 12. And we're going to learn what this excellent spirit is. There was a man in the kingdom of whom is the spirit of the holy gods, and in the days of the Father, light and understanding and wisdom. Like the wisdom of the gods was found in him, whom the king Nebuchadnezzar, thy father. So we understand at this time it was the father of Nebuchadnezzar. So then we understand that during this time it was handed down to the kingdom. So the king, I say, thy father made master of the magicians and the astrologers, the Chaldeans, and soothsayers. So verse 12. For as much as an excellent spirit, so this is where this is coming from, and knowledge and understanding, interpreting of dreams, and showing of hard sentences, and this dissolving of doubts was found the same Daniel, whom the king named Belteshazzar. Now let Daniel be called, and we'll show you the interpretation. So who is building up this Daniel here? Well, we learn that from verse 10. Now the queen. The queen here is going to the king and saying, hey, there is this man that has this understanding, this excellent knowledge, able to interpret dreams, and he's almost godlike in his understanding of all of these things. So Daniel interpreted the dream. We're going to save time here. So Daniel chapter 5, verse 29. It says, Then commanded Belteshazzar, and they clothed Daniel with scarlet and put a chain of gold about his neck and made a proclamation concerning him. This was the proclamation. And he should be the third ruler in the kingdom. So if we learn this, this is chapter 5, and in verse 6, or Daniel chapter 6, we understand that he was made a commissioner. Who originally put him into power? The previous king. The previous king is the one that exhorted him and placed him into power. So made a proclamation concerning David that he should be the third ruler of the kingdom. Darius just followed what the last king, what he said before. So that was the whole picture. Was Darius showing favoritism? He was just going along with what the last king said. King says, hey, we're going to make this king, this Daniel here, the third ruler. So the last king was able to see so much, and even the queen spoke highly of them. So Darius just followed suit. So let's back up a little bit, getting the whole picture together. Daniel chapter 5, we're going to go to verse 15. And now the wise men, the astrologers, have been brought into before me, and said, read this writing, and make known unto me the interpretation thereof. But they could not show the interpretation of the thing. Verse 16. And I have heard of thee that thou canst make interpretation and dissolve doubts. Now if thou canst read the writing, and make known to me the interpretation thereof, thou shalt be clothed with scarlet, and have a chain of gold about thy neck, and shalt be the third ruler of the kingdom. Then Daniel answered and said before the king, this is another reason why this Darius placed so highly of him. So we can see here the last king said, I'm going to give you all of these things. This is what Daniel said. Let thy gifts be to thyself. What is that saying? I don't want them. Like, you want to give me all of these things? I don't want them. And give thy rewards to another. Yet I will read the writing unto the king, and make known unto him the interpretation. If somebody is willing to do things that God put on his heart, God did not want riches and honor, or Daniel did not want riches and honor. He wanted to do what the Lord gave him to do. Now, for the next king to come along to know that Daniel did not want anything for it. What does that show about Daniel? Daniel was not what? Selfish. Daniel was not money hungry. Daniel was not, wanting power. Daniel just wanted to interpret the dream. Belteshazzar offered the same to others as well, just to kind of give more of an understanding of Belteshazzar. Let's go back to verse 7. So Daniel chapter 5, verse 7. The king cried aloud to bring the astrologers, the Chaldeans. Now mark this, the Chaldeans, that's key here, the Chaldeans, and the soothsayers, and the king spake and said to the wise men of the Babylon. Now, the wise men is the Chaldeans, and they're referred to as the Chaldeans as well. So, whosoever shall read this writing and show the interpretation thereof shall be clothed with scarlet, have a chain of gold about the neck, and shall be the third ruler in the kingdom. Now, the astrologers, just to kind of give an outline here, are the magi. If you ever want to look at magi, they're the enchanters. They're the people that did all these magics and stuff. So the Chaldeans is referred to as the wise men. Soothsayers, if you've ever heard those words, is somebody could foretell the future. So Belteshazzar was not showing favoritism because he offered the same exact thing to Daniel as he did these people. He just wanted answers and was willing to reward for it. So let's go back a little bit more. This is kind of, we're going to work off of this. We're going to get a little bit of a background to understand that it's not necessarily Daniel was just an amazing person, but we can see the history of what Daniel went through. So this is Nebuchadnezzar. I find it very interesting that Mike this morning brought up Daniel, Nebuchadnezzar, and all of these people this morning, and but I just think that it's weird the way that God works. So Daniel chapter 2, verse 2. So Daniel 2, verse 2. It says, "Then the king called the magicians, and to the astrologers, and the sorcerers, and the Chaldeans." So we can see, based on this, that kings turn to these people. Kings, for whatever reason, they turn to these and they're like, "Hey, this is your mission to give me these information." So called to the Chaldeans to show the king his dreams. So they came and stood before the king. So some mentioned in Daniel chapter 5, verse 7, which is right before this. So Daniel 2, let's see, "And the king said unto them," actually, let's go down to verse 5. "The king answered and said unto the Chaldeans, The thing is gone from me. If you will not make known unto me the dream with the interpretations thereof, you shall be cut into pieces, and your houses shall be made a dunghill." So is that a pretty big threat? If you do not answer what this is, if you don't interpret this, I'm going to just take you out. Now, verse 6. "But if show thy dream and the interpretation thereof, you shall receive the gifts of rewards and great honor. Therefore show me the dream and the interpretation thereof." So I'm either going to take off your head, or I'm going to give you gifts and honor. Let's go to verse 10. "The Chaldeans answered before the king and said, there is not a man upon earth that can show the king's matter. Therefore there is no king, lord, nor ruler that asks such things, and any magician or astrologer or Chaldean." So he's saying in this instance that nobody can interpret the dream. And it is a rare thing, verse 11, "that the king required that there is none other that can show before the king except the gods whom dwelleth not in flesh." So in this, who is the only one that can interpret the dream? God. Yeah, God is the only one that can do it. No fleshly person can do this. So verse 12. "For the cause king was angry and very furious, and commanded to destroy all the wise men of Babylon. And the decree went forth that the wise men should be slain, and they sought" who? "Daniel and their fellows to be slain." So no human can interpret but God. So destroy all wise men, that's in the Chaldeans, and they're including Daniel and his crew into this. So Daniel interprets the dream, and we go down to verse 27. "Daniel answered in the presence of the king and said, Thy secret which the king hath demanded, cannot the wise men, the astrologers, the magicians, and the soothsayers show unto the king?" Now this is kind of a trick question, because they couldn't, or else Daniel wouldn't be there. So verse 28, it says, "But there is a God in heaven, that revealeth secrets and maketh known to King Nebuchadnezzar what shall be of the latter days. Thy dream and thy visions of thy head upon the bed are these." So we can see that he interprets the dreams. We scroll down to verse 47. "The king answered Daniel and said, Of a truth it is that your God is a God of gods, and the Lord of kings, and the revealer of secrets, seeing thou couldst reveal this secret." And in verse 48, "Then the king made Daniel a great man, and gave him many great gifts, and made him ruler over the whole province of Babylon, and the chief of the governors over all the wise men of Babylon." So we can see, even during this time, because he was able to interpret the dream, he was able to receive these things. Verse 49, Then Daniel requested of the king that he set Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego over the affairs of the province of Babylon, but Daniel sat at the gate of the king. So ultimately, the Chaldeans said, nobody but God can answer. God was able to interpret, and so he wanted to save the life of his friends, so he made them rulers over them. So Daniel was at the gate. Did the Chaldeans, people that know the story leading up to this, did the Chaldeans respect the decision and not retaliate against it? Did the Chaldeans say, okay, that's fine, we'll just move on? Did they? No. Daniel 3, 8 through 13. Daniel chapter 3, 8 through 13. Wherefore at the time certain the Chaldeans came near and accused the Jews. They spake and said unto the king Nebuchadnezzar, O king, live forever. Thou, O king, hast made a decree that every man that shall hear the sound of the cornet, flute, harp, sackbut, psaltery, and dulcimer, and all kinds of music, shall fall down and worship the golden image. And whoso falleth not down and worship it, that he should be cast into the midst of the burning fiery furnace. And it says, and there are certain Jews who thou hast set over the affairs of the province of Babylon, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. These men, O king, have not regarded thee. They serve not thy gods, nor worship the golden image which thou hast set up. Verse 13. Then Nebuchadnezzar in his rage and fury commanded to bring Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Then they brought these men before the king. Now we can see from the resulting of this is found in 27 through 30. We won't read all of them, but it said, the princess and the governors and the captains and the king's counselors being gathered together saw these men upon the bodies of the fire, and no power, no was a hair of their head singed, neither were their coats changed, nor their smell of fire that was passed on them. So let's just go down here a little bit. It says, verse 29, therefore I make a decree that every people, nation, and language which speak anything amiss against the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego shall be cut into pieces, and their houses shall be made a dunghill, because there is no other God that can deliver them of this sort. So let's go back to our text. Daniel chapter 6 and verse 4. So back to our text. Daniel 6:4, it says, and the presidents and the princess sought to find occasion against Daniel concerning the kingdom, but they could find none occasion nor fault, for as much as he was faithful, neither was there any error or fault found in him. So unlike the trumpet and the bowing of this false idol that Nebuchadnezzar set up, Daniel had no skeletons and no dirt to unravel. So is it good to do background research of someone? I don't know if anybody's ever tried for a job and they've had to have, go through a background check. We're in the middle of trying to find a pastor. Some things that I think that we need to look in finding a pastor is, first and foremost, is he saved? Now, if they're not saved, automatically, without question, should not be considered. Their education, if any, past churches, any history of that, their family, if they can have any family, if they're a soul winner, if they have any discipling or congregational, we do background checks for that. So there is good reason why we do background checks on people. So to understand them, to make sure that we're not bringing somebody in here that is a false teacher, that has false understanding of Scripture, and that might be able to deliver false information. Likewise, you wouldn't want to hire somebody that has a history of possibly 15 or 20 different jobs, never comes to work, always late, is a troublemaker and all that other stuff. So finding research and background of somebody is good. When is it bad? When that information is used to put down somebody. I don't know if you've ever known people that look for things to just condemn the person. Have you ever known somebody that just tries to find fault with somebody just to find fault? To manipulate and to control them. If I find dirt on you, and I don't tell anybody, and I have that tucked away in my pocket, is that good to do? I know what you did. I'm not going to tell anybody, but if you toe the line, if you do everything right, I'm going to do this. So you use information, background, you can use it to manipulate somebody and to control them. You can use this to talk and to gossip about somebody. Oh, did you find out about such and such? Did you know about this? To stir up trouble or to argue. There may be nothing wrong, and you might bring up something that they did 15, 20 years ago. Now, they may have had an issue during that time, corrected it and gone better, but finding it and stirring it up trouble. So verse 5, we find in Daniel, it says, Then said these men, We have found not any occasion against this Daniel, except what? We find it against discerning the Lord. So imagine that. Now with me, I don't know, I'm not a Daniel. I mean, it really wouldn't take long to find stuff about me, but what a testimony. Nothing they found about Daniel except for his devotion to God. So verse 6, Then these presidents and the princes assembled together to the king and said unto him, King Darius, live forever. Now the reason why I gave a background, the people that tried to manipulate a situation said these exact same things. O King Darius, live forever. Or O King, whatever, live forever. They're buttering up the king. That is fake flattery. How many people like to be buttered up? Falsely. Just to kind of butter you up, just to butter you up. Anybody like that? I would rather be smacked in the mouth than to somebody butter me up just to kind of use and abuse me. So this is just empty flattery. O king, live forever. And then actually this is when they bring their true, what they actually want. Verse 7, And the presidents of the kingdom, the governors and the princes, the counselors and the captains. So we can see that it's not just the presidents and the princes. This is not just this is everybody. Have consulted together to establish a royal statute to make a firm decree that whosoever shall ask a petition of any God, because during this time there was more than one God, but this is of any God, or man for 30 days, say thee, O king, he shall be cast into the den of lions. So verse 8, Now, O king, establish. Now, that is commanding the king. Now, do this. Now, we understand that there was a lot of people that's there. Pretty much the whole governing body of this area was present at this time. For verse 7, so it says, Now, O king, establish a decree and sign the writing that it be changed, and that it be not changed, according to the law of the Medes and the Persians, which altereth not. Darius then signs, verse 9. Did the king know that it was a setup for Daniel at this time? Did the king know that? The king had no idea that all of these people was set up just for Daniel. Darius just thought that they wanted to have a paper sign. Now there was a lot of people that was there. There was a lot of governing people that were there, and he was forced into it. He says, now sign this. Now, he wanted somebody that was what? Honest and truthful and all these people. So he didn't think that these people that was making him sign this letter, okay, they're not meaning ill intent for anything. They just want me to sign this letter. So, no harm in signing the letter. Okay, I'll go ahead and sign it. So verse 10, then Daniel knew that the writing was signed. He went into the house, and his windows being opened in the chamber towards Jerusalem, he knelt upon his knees 3 times a day and prayed and gave thanks before his God as he did aforetime, or as he did before. Did Daniel know of the meeting? We can assume, but we don't know. He just knows that the papers were signed. There was nothing else that he understood that maybe all of these people were against him. Why did the king sign this? We only know that he knew that the papers were signed. And we could go into and we can say, well, Daniel knew of the meeting because of his statue and his, position. But we don't know that for sure. Did Daniel know of all of the governor's plot? Judging by this, I wouldn't say that he knew of the governor's plot. But he understands people because what did they do to his friends? They manipulated his friends and threw them into the fiery furnace. So he understood how crooked and evil people could be, but maybe he didn't know the whole story. So we know the writing was signed, the writing that said not to pray. I wonder if that will ever happen in the United States. Currently, we're not allowed to pray in school. Now, I'm not an old person, but I've been around a while. We used to have moments of silence in school. That was kind of like an underlining thing for prayer. You could have a moment of silence, and there used to be that in the morning. Not allowed at work. Before meetings and stuff, you can have a famous quote of some kind of astrologer or some kind of famous person, but there's no prayer at work. At my job at least, and maybe other places as well. Verse 11. We'll go down to verse 11. Then these men assembled and found Daniel praying and making supplication before his God. This, I think, was written in a way. Did they just find Daniel praying? Did they just happen to come across Daniel praying? Oh, we just happened to watch him praying. Now it says, these men, more than one, was looking after to say, okay, we have this thing signed, we're going to kill him, we're going to throw him in the lines, we're going to have a watch to see if he does pray. So it was a setup. The supplication, and they found him praying, which is no shock to anybody. So then they came near and said, and spake unto the king concerning the king's decree. So this is what they did. They reminded the king of what happened. Hast thou not signed a decree that every man, now ask the petition of any god or man within 30 days, say thee, O king, shall be cast into the den of lions? The king answered and said, the thing is true, according to the law of the Medes and the Persians, which altereth not. Then this is where the hammer gets thrown down. Then answered they and said before the king, that Daniel, which is of the children of the captivity of Judah, regarded not thee, O king. Now, did he not regard it? He just prayed the same exact way as he did before. O king, nor the decree that thou hast signed, but maketh this petition 3 times a day. So how much did these people look at Daniel? They knew that he prayed 3 times. Not just they didn't catch him once, but all 3 times that he prayed. verse 14, it says, the king was crushed. Then the king, where he heard these words, was sore displeased within himself, and set his heart to Daniel to deliver him. And he labored in going down of the sun to deliver him. So, did these men know that they were going to try, or that the king was going to try to save Daniel? Judging by the type of decree that was written, I believe they did. Then these men assembled unto the king and said unto the king, now, O king, or know, O king, that the law of the Medes and Persians is no decree nor statute which the king established may be changed. As it goes down and it says, then the king commanded that they brought Daniel and cast him into the den of lions. Now the king spake and said unto Daniel, this is what he said unto Daniel, thy God whom thou servest continually, he will deliver thee. Now, why would the king say that? Why would the king understand that? Now, the reason why I brought back the Nebuchadnezzar, and during talking about that time, do you think Darius found out about what happened to his friends? Did Darius know that his friends was thrown into this fiery furnace and that they came out perfectly fine? So he's saying, like-minded, I'm throwing him into the den of lions, and it says that he will deliver them, like he delivered your friends. Verse 17. And a stone was brought and laid into the mouth of the den, and the king sealed it with his own signet, and with the signet of his lords, and the purpose might not be changed concerning Daniel. So not only did he lock him in, give him a little pep talk about God, that he won't, that he'll deliver him, but he sealed him in. Verse 18 and 19, we're almost done with the reading. Then the king went into his palace, passed the night fasting, neither were there instruments of music brought before him, and his sleep went from him. Then the king rose early in the morning and went into haste into the den of lions. Did Daniel know that the king worried all night for him? Daniel had no idea. So did the people that plotted Daniel's death give Daniel a second thought? No, they did not. The king addressed Daniel as the servant of the living God. So when he came into the den and cried with a lament voice with Daniel, the king spake, said unto Daniel, O Daniel, servant of the living God, is thy God whom thou servest continually, able to deliver thee from the lions? Verse 21, then said Daniel unto the king, O king, live forever. Now that is not something that Daniel just said. Daniel is saying to the king, don't worry, I'm fine. He answered him and he says, O king, live forever. He is in essence saying, King, I forgive you for doing this. King, I know it's not your fault, don't worry. Then said Daniel unto the king, verse 22, sorry. My God hath sent his angel, so this is comforting words that he gives to the king, hath shut the lion's mouth, that have not hurt me, for as much as before him innocency was found in me. And also before thee, O king, have I done no harm. So he is saying, I have not wronged you in any way. God saved me from being devoured by the lions. So he's saying in essence, I'm still faithful to you. Then was the king exceeding glad for him, and commanded that they should take Daniel up out of the den. So Daniel was taken up of the den, and no manner of hurt was found in him, because he believed in his God. Because he believed in his God. That is key to this. Because he believed in his God. And we know from verse 24, you don't have to read, but we understand that the king casted the other men that accused Daniel and their children and their wives into the lion's den, and they had their way with them. They were eaten up the moment they came down. And we see another decree that was made in verse 26. I make a decree that in every dominion of my kingdom, men tremble and fear before God of Daniel. For he is the living God, and is steadfast forever, and his kingdom that which shall not be destroyed, and his dominion shall be even unto the end. So what can we learn from this, after saying all of that? From both accounts, John was beheaded by addressing sin. When he was talking to, I guess, the king's mistress, and he said that it is not right for you to be together, because she's married to thy brother. Daniel was cast into the lion's den for prayer, for his love and his dedication to God. What we can learn from these is persecution comes even now when you make a biblical stand for God. When you stand for what is right, there is persecution for that. Now, you might not be as much as being beheaded, but in other cities or in other countries, if you pray, if you turn to God, is there still beheadings this day for believing in God? Even to this very day, that is still a thing. Now, the devotion to God in prayer. Joe Kennedy, September 6th of 2023, this was just a year ago, prayed and had to go before the Supreme Court. He was a football coach in Washington State. He had to appear between the Supreme Court, not because of any kind of action that he did that was illegal. What did he do? He what? Prayed. So that persecution is still happening today. So when facing an unknown, now Daniel didn't know that God was going to save him from the lion's den. He knew that he saved his friends from the fiery furnace, and he knew, regardless, I'm going to pray. So when facing an unknown, you have two options. Question the Lord as did John, or pray continually each day as did Daniel. So to question God or to pray. In Daniel's case, he was not moved when facing death. That dedication to his God moved Darius enough to acknowledge Daniel's strong faith before he put him into the lion's den. He said, "Thy God who thou serve will save you." Now, can others say that about you? When your back is against the wall, can others say that so-and-so will remain faithful to God? Has anyone called you a servant of God, as did this Darius to Daniel? I've been called a lot of things in my life. I've not been called a servant of God yet. So Daniel's dedication moved the king so much that it affected people around the kingdom. Enough that it made a decree, and it said, "the God of Daniel." So it moved people. Has your faith moved others around you? Now, it can move two different ways. Your actions can either bring somebody closer or what? Further away from God. Now, to kind of put this, for the unknown, when the unknown comes, what do you do? Many actions are learned from others around us. Some that grew up in homes where there was no church, no biblical standards, when the unknown happens, they do not turn to God. They do not know about turning to God. They're not been told to turn to God. It's not something that they've ever learned. They turn to what? One another. They go and they're like, "Help me, so-and-so," or "Help me doing this thing." They turn to drinking. When something becomes so much for them, they turn to the bottle. They turn to drugs. Now, when I say drugs, I'm not talking about the drugs that helps you to balance, the medication. I'm not talking about that, because medication is something that is needed. There's people that are born with an imbalance in themselves that is no fault of their own, different things that happen that they need medicine. I'm talking about people that are taking drugs to escape reality. People that take drugs that want to just kind of escape from what they're going through. So we as Christians often look at the world, or look as the world rather. And someone that is not a Christian is watching you, as did those people in Daniel. They're seeing what you're going to do during tribulation. Do we show them faith, steadfast commitment? Or do we show them worry, stress, uncertainty, anger, depression, and unfaithfulness? Sometimes we lack the needed faith. Sometimes what I'm saying is Christians don't look Christian. Sometimes we look more like the world than we would like to say. And it can be a hurdle to somebody. And they can say, well, I thought you was a Christian. And so we can kind of deter that. Now Daniel here didn't. Daniel preserved his faith and he continued to pray even up against death. But sometimes we do worry. Sometimes we get mad. And sometimes we question, just as John did. As the famous song says, we're going to end with this and then we're going to address the camera. It says, dare to be a Daniel. Dare to stand alone. Dare to have a purpose firm. And dare to make it known. So if you're still watching this, I don't know what you're going through in your life. You may be facing people around you that's attacking you. People purposely setting up things around you to encapsulate you and to kind of put you into a predicament. You may be facing something that is unknown, that you don't really know how to deal with. And if you've ever been raised up in a church that is not, or raised up in a family that you didn't have to rely on God, you may rely on other things in your future, or in your past rather. And even your future, you might not see God in it at all. But Daniel here was facing a whole government, a whole body that was against him. There was not a single person but Darius that was for him, and God that he could rely on in prayer. Oftentimes we feel defeated, broken down, and confused about the unknown that is facing our lives. We can learn here that we can question God, but the best thing to do is to pray. Seek His face and seek the understanding of the one person that knows the whole story. I can pinpoint what I'm going to do from moment to moment, but there's certain things that happen in life that becomes so hard that even the Christian can kind of pull away. So my prayer for you is that we dare to be a Daniel. That when we're facing the unknown, that we turn to God in prayer, turn to God faithfully into understanding exactly what is it that He's trying to show us or test us through our life. It is easy to become the world and turn from God, but the strongest Christian will get on his knees every day like Daniel. So dare to be a Daniel.